Hey guys, so welcome to another shipping analysis video. Last time I talked about Discord and Celestia versus Discord and Fluttershy, and I got a couple of comments as far as couples to discuss in the next video, and the one that I chose to go with for this video was a person who was asking about Big Mac ships, particularly Big Mac and Fluttershy, Big Mac and Marble Pie, and Big Mac and Cheerily. They also were wondering about a ship which I used in my own sort of pony comics, and that is Big Mac and Rarity. Now, I'll explain that one last, but I think once I've gotten through explaining the other three, you'll kind of understand, I think, why I shipped Big Mac and Rarity together. So let's start with Big Mac and Shirley, since there's not as much to say about this one. There's not a lot that can be speculated about these characters' compatibility, given that we don't see a ton of Shirley. However, generally speaking, I have a problem with this particular ship. And the reason people ship it is because of the episode Hearts and First Day. And I think that if you ship it because you saw that episode and you're like, oh, well, I could just ship these guys together, then you were completely missing the whole point of that episode. The point of the episode was not to try and force two people to be together, as well as there's sort of being a little bit of an unspoken moral about how it's okay to be single. At least I got that from the episode. But there's a couple of problems here too. Like for starters, if you're shipping them, like I said, you're missing the moral of the episode. Secondly, when the CMC picked Big Mac to hook up with their teacher, they did so with the criteria simply just being an attractive adult stallion who's a decent guy. Like they didn't really seem to have a whole lot of other criteria for it, and that's a really sort of shallow reason to pick somebody. I mean, we don't know if Big Mac and Shirley have anything in common at all aside from both being decent people. I mean, that seems to be about it. The two characters express no remote interest in each other whatsoever when set in a romantic setting. Shirley openly seemed to express earlier in the episode when the CMC brought it up through her facial expressions and body language that she had no interest in getting a boyfriend and that she was kind of annoyed with people's insistency on her being with somebody because it's really annoying when you're single and people tell you stop being single. That's terrible. How dare you be single? It can be really annoying. And if she doesn't want a partner, then that's fine. She doesn't need to have one. And after that episode, we've not really seen anything of the two of them interacting beyond maybe occasionally seeing them hanging out together in the background or something. But that doesn't really mean a lot. Also, wouldn't it be kind of weird if, somebody set you up, let's say someone set you up on a blind date and the date went horribly, horribly wrong. Do you really think that you would bother giving that person a second date? And that's kind of what this ship is implying, is that somebody who was forced against their will to almost marry somebody they barely know, then decides later on that they want to start dating and later marry this guy. It just seems really weird. I can understand them being friends after the incident, having a good laugh about the absurdity of it, and then being on friendly terms, but I just don't see it as likely that these characters would ever really take any particular strong romantic interest in one another, especially since they seemed so incredibly disinterested to begin with, and they don't seem to have anything in particular in common. So yeah, that's all I really have to say on that one. But moving on to the Big Mac and Fluttershy and Big Mac and Marble Pie ships. And I'm going to sort of talk about these two sort of simultaneously because my opinion on both of them is pretty much the same. And that is that people ship these couples because of the idea of the shy guy and the shy girl, and they think that that idea is cute. The problem with that is that, um, well, there's a number of problems, but for starters, um, getting a relationship started with two very shy people. In the case of, Marble Pie and Big Mac, when you put the two of them alone, they just kind of stand around and don't say anything. Ooh, so romantic. Just sort of standing there, occasionally going, mm-hmm, yep. Real engaging conversation, real easy to start a relationship off of that. And secondly, with Fluttershy, uh, Fluttershy strikes me as the kind of person who would be attracted to someone after getting to know them. Like, she's attracted to people by their personalities, and not their appearance or anything of that nature. And so, in Fluttershy's case, you would actually have to actively pursue her to end up in a relationship with her, because I don't think that she would just sort of stumble into a relationship of her own volition. She would have to have somebody actively taking an interest. I mean, Discord, like I said before, really seems to act like he's got a crush on her, but Fluttershy seems fairly oblivious. And so, I would say that, Big Mac doesn't seem to have any particular interest in Fluttershy that we've seen. In fact, Big Mac doesn't seem to have any particular interest in anyone. That's the thing. He's not a very social person. Now, he doesn't have social anxiety like Fluttershy or Marble, but he's just not very sociable. Like, he doesn't talk to a lot of people, and I just don't see it as likely that he would pursue a girl like that. Like, he may think that she's kind of cute and like being around her, but I think that it would take a lot for him to actually go and offer some kind of affection. And maybe he would. Maybe he would go so far as to make a first move, but I don't think he would know where to go from there. I think with Fluttershy just would misinterpret the gesture as being just friendly and platonic, and Big Mac would be stuck at square one again. In the case of Marble, I think that due to her social anxiety being so severe, it seems, that I'm not sure if she would even entirely know how to react. I think that she'd appreciate the gesture, but I don't think she'd know what to do from that point forward. And I don't think the Big Mac would really honestly know what to do either. So it would be more just kind of sitting in silence, blushing. Again, that's got to progress a relationship real quick. There's a bigger problem, though, aside from getting a relationship started, because it's entirely possible for two shy people to start a relationship. But the bigger problem at hand um, has to do with once they're in the relationship. And that is that in any good relationship, you should be pushing each other to grow and to overcome your faults. And when you both have the same faults, it becomes the blind leading the blind. Big Mac isn't very social, and both of these girls are notorious for being shy or having social anxiety. And I feel like given that um, similarity, that like neither one of them would really help each other to grow. Um, on the one hand, for example, I think that Big Mac would potentially, out of good intention, end up actually enabling a lot of the social anxiety. For example, let's say hypothetically, they're at a store or something, and Marble or Flutters is nervous about going up to the counter and paying for whatever it is. For whatever reason, they're nervous about talking to the clerk at the counter. So Big Mac, being the nice guy he is, decides that he'll just take the item up front and pay for them so that they don't have to be made uncomfortable. This is bad, because in that situation, what you should be doing is pushing them to go and talk to the clerk themselves, because it's important that you overcome uh, these sorts of social anxiety, and it's important you overcome problems that you have that interfere with your ability to function. And I think that Big Mac would end up unintentionally enabling these sorts of issues if it was a girl that he really cared about. Maybe he wouldn't have this problem so much if it was a friend of his, but with a girlfriend, I think he would care too much about her, like he wouldn't want to see her uncomfortable, and I think that would end up being a problem in the relationship, actually. And on the flip side, Big Mac isn't very good at communicating his feelings, which we saw in Brotherhood Social. That whole ordeal could have potentially been avoided had he just sort of expressed how he was feeling with Apple Bloom earlier, and he didn't. So, so yeah, and I think that, in a relationship with Marble isn't going to try and get Big Mac to talk because she doesn't talk either. She's not going to put any energy into trying to get him to talk about his feelings or to open up more with people because she's the exact same way. And again, it's going to be a lot of the two of them sitting in silence and doing nothing. And so neither one of them are growing in this relationship. Fluttershy may end up trying to help Big Mac, may try to give him some encouragement and whatnot. And maybe might even push him a little bit, especially given how her character has been growing with the help of her friends, and she has been getting a bit more of a backbone. And obviously, she's able to rein in Discord and all. But when Discord is doing something, Discord does something that sort of fouls things up for other people, and Fluttershy reins in that behavior. But in this situation, Big Mac's not really doing anything particularly wrong necessarily. He just doesn't want to talk, and I feel like Fluttershy would not feel as good about trying to push him outside of his comfort zone when he doesn't seem to need it necessarily. Like, it's not reining in bad behavior, but rather pushing someone to do something they're not comfortable with. And I think that that might still be something that wouldn't be very easy for Fluttershy to do. On top of it, there's a decent chance that Fluttershy may not always notice, since she doesn't seem to have, the greatest sort of social intuition with other people. So yeah, I mean, that's in general the basic problem with both of these ships. It's just that the characters exhibit the same flaws, and so there wouldn't really be a lot of growth between the two of them. But it doesn't make the relationships inherently unhealthy or toxic or anything, but it is very problematic in the sense that in a good, strong relationship, you really need to push each other to improve, and I think that in both of these cases that wouldn't really happen. Which brings me, lastly, to the BigMac and Rarity. And considering what I was saying about the other two ships, I think that this one makes a bit more sense when you think about it. I mean, it seems random at first, but there was a reason for it. And that is that, Rarity is most characterized for her being very, very outgoing, very sort of stubborn, very pushy, in a good way, though. I mean, she always has the best intentions behind these sorts of things. Um, And so I think that if you put Rarity in a relationship with Big Mac, that Rarity would be the one who would notice, um, for sure, when Big Mac was feeling down or not telling her something that he should tell her. I think she would be the first person to notice, since she seems to be much more in tune with the people around her. And she would push him. And she would push him, and she would push him, and she would continue to push the issue until he opened up and he talked to her about whatever it was, because Rarity is sort of stubborn and nosy like that. And I think that that would be good for him, to have somebody who would push him to do things that aren't necessarily very comfortable for him. Alternatively, Rarity's biggest flaws as a character tend to be the fact that she's over emotional, and she tends to get sort of carried away. Um, and so in Rarity's case, I think having someone like Big Mac, who is very sort of down to earth, very grounded, would be very helpful for her, because Big Mac would be able to sort of rein her in when she's kind of drifting off into nowhere land. Calm her down when she's freaking out over little things, etc. And so I think that in this case, the character's strengths and weaknesses pretty perfectly balance each other, um, so that they can help each other overcome their flaws and grow as individuals. I guess one last little note on this subject about helping each other to grow. I say that you should be helping each other overcome your flaws. That's not quite the same thing as fixing people. We don't fix people. People aren't machines. And sometimes I've had people mistakenly interpret this as me suggesting that when you get in a relationship, your goal is to fix the other person. It's not to fix the other person. It's to help them when they are too afraid to do what's good for themselves. And I mean, this is also important in a friendship as well. I mean, you should push your friends to do things that they should, but a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a husband, a wife, this person has a lot more push in. It's if a friend of yours tries to encourage you to do something that's outside your comfort zone, you may or may not listen. But when your romantic partner tries to push you to do something outside of your comfort zone, you tend to be a bit more receptive, because this is a person who tends to have, um, their opinions tend to have a bit more weight for you in your eyes. Um, and this is because, at the end of the day, this is your partner. This is the person that you chose to go through life with, and this is the person who, you know, you're supposed to help each other overcome all of the obstacles that you face in life. And so it's important that you're with somebody who's going to push you when you need the push. So that's about all I have to say for now. Remember, if you have a ship that you'd like me to talk about, put it in the comment section down below. Only one rule: please no crossover ships. But otherwise they can be from any show, book, movie, whatever. And I'll look into them if I'm not already familiar with them. And so yeah, remember guys, don't take yourselves too seriously.